This is Dinesh Mutwel here from the IIM Indore Chennai chapter, and I welcome you all again to another webinar we've organized today. So today we have Mukund Kasturi sir. Yes, we have Mukund Kasturi sir, who is the Managing Director of India and the Director of the Southeast Asia market for Flexco, and he has been with Flexco for the last 8 years in various roles, and prior to that he's had a very rather varied career in the manufacturing setup, starting from technical roles and going up the rank. So thank you, Mukund sir, for actually taking time out for this. So the session we have today is focused on Mukund sir's experiences around the strategies that are employed in a B2B setup, especially from drawing from his experience in manufacturing over the last 28 plus years. And we're looking to understand how the manufacturing setup actually works from a B2B standpoint, learn about the various growth strategies that can be used for people who are in this particular setup, and also draw some insights from his experience so far. So over to you, Mukund sir.
Thanks, Dinesh. So do we wait or just start?
We can start, sir. We are live, so we can always review it later.
All right. Good afternoon to everybody who's joined in, and thanks for listening to me. I'll try to make it as non-boring as possible. Let's make it very interactive because all of you are in different steps of your career. So I'm sure you'll have a lot of questions while we go along. So the caveat is that even though I'm showing you something specific to my industry, basically we are looking at broad basing it across different industries and different platforms. I don't know whether some of you are in the cloud, some of you are on the ground, some of you are in different. But basically you're dealing with environment, you're dealing with circumstances, you're dealing with scenarios, you're dealing with people, right? So that doesn't change, irrespective of. So any B2B transaction is in that process. You have a buyer, you have a seller, and then you have an in-between process, which makes sure that the guy who wants the product gets it from the guy who has the product, right? So there's that. If I have to really cut short that whole process, is just these two things, right? You have somebody who has a demand, you have somebody who can fulfill the demand, and how you do it, the different processes involved in it is what is basically. So I think there are many people getting in. So do you want me to wait for a minute or just continue? Dinesh, should I continue?
Sure, sir. We have close to 20 participants already, so you can continue.
All right, so since I don't know the gender, let me just say guys and girls who are in this, welcome again. And why can't I share my screen? Okay. Okay, so somebody had asked me a question in the run-up to this about what are the challenges and growths outside of India, right? So I'm going to split it into two aspects. One is the India challenge and growth strategy, which we have adopted, and the Southeast Asia challenges and growth strategies, which we have adopted. And I also handle the Middle East, which is another 14 countries, starting from Pakistan right up to Israel, up to Jordan. Okay, so I'll just give you a small example later on about how we actually plan growth strategies, forecasting, and stuff like that. And I will leave you with what I think are the attributes needed for being a good leader. I'm trying to put in words, or I've tried to put in my experience and thought, so it doesn't look cliched. It's not what you've read in the books. It's very practical day-to-day stuff which will help you to get better at what you're doing, right? So let me quickly give you a summary of what Flexco does. Flexco is basically a 113-year-old company, 1906, based out of Chicago in the US, and we have manufacturing or warehousing operations across the world. Started off as joining leather belts as a product and moved on to joining of rubber belts. So our basic bread and butter comes from the fact that you can, if many of you are engineers, you know what is a conveyor belt. It moves something from one place to another. So it could be in rubber, it could be in PVC, it could be in polyurethane, could be in different things. So how do you join it mechanically instead of using vulcanized processes so that you save time for the customer? That's the USP of the product, which was launched 113 years ago, right? And then when we added on to that, then the basic thing was, if you see this, to become the leader in maximizing belt conveyor productivity worldwide through superior service and innovation. So the first thing a company needs to have, or you as a person need to have, is what is the vision you're going to set for yourself? That has to be something which is really long-term and something which you strive to achieve on a daily basis, right? So in our case, it was to build effective and efficient systems which will enhance corporate values and behaviors. So when you say corporate values and behaviors, we're talking about stakeholders of all fronts. On one side, you have the people who have invested the money. On the other side, you have the people who are using your product. And then you have the people who make the product, your employees, your vendors, the complete gamut of the supply chain, right? Starting from the raw material right up to the person who sits and laughs all the way to the bank if you give him a good dividend. Right? So typically the challenge given to me in 2013 was this company didn't exist in India. They had a 3-people marketing operation where you just had 3 distributors who were buying from the US. And the challenge given to me was started from zero, it's like a startup, and build the systems in such a way that we are able to provide a strong Flexco program for all kinds of industries in India. So before I go to that, this is quickly the kind of industries which we deal with. So we basically classify into 2 sectors, heavy duty and light duty. The heavy duty, it's all rubber belt based, more heavier equipment, heavier stuff like cement, steel, power, paper and pulp, fertilizer, wood processing, construction, aggregate. And then the light duty is more like parcel. So parcel means in your language, Amazon, Flipkart kind of people, down to all kinds of airports, food processing, commercial laundry, filter media, wood processing, all kinds of stuff which is there. Okay, so before I actually get into you need to understand the kind of product which we are trying to focus on, right? So typically, if you go to any industry, and this is, sorry, the IT folks, this is more to do with the mechanical engineering part. So this is typically a conveyor where you have material flowing from one chute and then material going out to the other chutes. Yeah? This is basically the whole conveyor in any industry, right? So these are all the issues which typically happen in a conveyor, and our endeavor is to solve these problems so that the conveyor's productivity or the customer's productivity goes up in the process, right? All right, so as I come back to India's history and transition, right? 2013, when I took over the company, we just had 1 marketing office with 3 limited resources, and there was no business as such. And these 2 distributors were buying from the States, and they were fleecing the market by selling it at 3 times, 5 times the price specified, because there was no competition, there was no demand creation, people didn't know about the product. So this was the basic strategy which I had to initially kick off, right? So when I went to the board in the US and I told them the basic growth strategy hinges on creating a team, developing a local sales force, localizing products. So one of the adages which we very strongly believe in is think global but act local. Whether you're a multinational company or whether you are an Indian company, the basic philosophy is think very big, global, but when you act local, you're acting to a particular scenario, circumstance, and in a limited scale. So many of you know this, some of you don't know this, so let me take some time to take you through this. If it's not visible, I need to move the screen a bit.
It's
Can you
visible.
see?
Yeah, it's visible.
Well, I can move it to the left. Yeah. So it used to be one of the fastest growing economies. So we'll just keep the pandemic out of this discussion because that's affecting everybody. There is a huge opportunity to leverage the product range because we have close to 400,000 companies in India registered, I believe, in the last census. End of the day, the customers value better products, right? They may talk about cheap products and stuff like that, but they still value better products. This is one of the reasons why Chinese proliferation in India is not as much as in other Southeast Asian countries. Obviously, manpower resourceability is very good in India at relatively lower costs when you compare it to the global level. You can get a very good frontline engineer for maybe 7 to 8 lakhs in India, which is translating to about $10,000 to $15,000 a year against $60,000 to $80,000, which you would pay to somebody in the US. So from that perspective, the overall cost of the base comes down, right? And then there's a very strong vendor base. You have all kinds of industries here. You have the automobile sector, you have the tire ones, you have the tire tools, you have the industrial sector, you have pumps, you have filters, you have all kinds of power, everything which builds a very strong vendor base in South India and in the western part of India, largely. These are the advantages. Now let's look at what is the peculiarity of Indian market. Specific to a lot of industrial products is it's yet to evolve. It's in a very nascent stage in terms of automation. It's in a very nascent stage in terms of people not able to understand what exactly they want, right? It is very extremely price sensitive in certain segments. It has been, the prices have been driven down, one, due to competition, and two, due to people not exactly knowing what value a particular product would give. One of the issues which we have as a multinational company is people don't have that much respect for IP rights as compared to other countries. If you take European countries, if you take even Singapore and other places, you would see that the people's respect for intellectual property is far higher than what it is in India. Loyalty of customers is difficult to sustain. Many of you who are in industrial would know that customers continue to expect the same levels of service and product reliability, product performance. The loyalty per se is there in certain sectors, but not there in all sectors. So that's another peculiarity for Indian market, unlike the bigger, more established Western economies. Payments are difficult to get, right? People have a payment pattern from 15 days up to 150 days. Tata Steel, for example, today during the pandemic has gone from 42 days normal payment pattern to 102 days payment pattern. So cash flow becomes a big issue as far as payments are concerned for companies to operate in. The government sector, less said the better. It's if you have a strong value system and if you don't have the right methodology to enter, it's something which you can't enter so easily as compared to the private sector. Even China has far more disciplined systems than India in terms of systematic approach to business. So India is totally different. That's what people need to understand when they get into this country. If you see what's the key challenges faced by a Western company getting into India is the brand or the product is unknown. The geographies are so diverse and so different, right? What happens in the Northeast has no relevance to what happens in Kerala, what happens in Gujarat. Everything is totally different. Languages are different, cultures are different. The way people greet you is different. The way the body language is different. The food is different. Everything is different. So remote access to people, right? You have in some places, if you are living in a city and you want to visit a customer in city, it's probably very easy. But if you are living in Calcutta and you want to go to a customer in Aizawl, I can tell you that it's going to take you 2 days with a combination of air, bus, car, all kinds of things. And very high import duties. We still have the highest import duties around in the world, except for Pakistan, which is worse than us. Pakistan, Bangladesh are worse than us. But other than that, we are very high in a lot of products. And there are proliferation of low cost or low brand competitors coming in from Southeast Asia and China, right? So these are the fundamental issues which we are facing. So when we had this, we had to come up with a strategy. So the basic strategy was, you need to have a basic strategy for your core business. You need to have something which is a capability enhancement, and then you need to have a future growth prospect. Please remember, whenever you're making a strategy, you need to try to differentiate between today's activity and tomorrow's activity. Tomorrow's activity is going to be more long-term. It's going to be more a different skill set needed for the people who are going to think about making those growth strategies as compared to running and managing an existing set of business. So you can see here the different methodologies adopted. I'm not going to read through everything, but it's talking about assessing opportunities, focusing on specific programs, building project team capabilities, increasing sales reach, improving domain expertise, training, developing partnerships, protect. So there are certain segments where you have to protect irrespective of margins. There are certain segments where you can use your cash cow methodology. There are certain segments where you have to play the value game. So you will have to clearly differentiate between the segments you're operating in and the type of customers you're operating in. We went into the customers and found out that these are the basic things which we probably need to do. Many of you have studied marketing. So many of Philip Kotler's would have probably spoken about this in different forms, but in the B2B sector, distribution expansion, developing and nurturing business development skills is a very key of subset for a specific kind of salesperson who can build on something which is already present. As I mentioned, continue market and product segmentation, increasing wallet share. I don't know how many of you know what is a wallet share. If I'm selling, let's say I'm selling this glass to a customer. Umbrella marketing, what are the other products which I can sell to the same customer and increase my overall wallet share? Today, if I'm selling 100 rupees or $100 to a customer, it is easier for me to increase $100 to $150 than to go and find a new customer, which will involve a lot of resource, time, cost, money, etc. So the increasing wallet share is a very key component to business strategy increase. Of course, continue key account management. You have like, for example, in India, you have 12 or 14 big cement groups, the Aditya Birlas, the Ultratechs, the L&Ts, and other people. So we need to have a different strategy which adopts key account management. Key account management basically means that you build relationships at different levels in the organization and different hierarchies so that you are tuned to what that customer is looking for, both from a corporate level, from a plant level, from a site level. Of course, these are basics like providing technical support, demonstration, increasing touch point with key end users. If you are dealing to B2B, most people have an in-between channel. You have a distribution network, which is actually going to the end users. The distribution channel will always do what is good for them. So unless you have a very strong partnership with the distributor and you're able to go and create opportunities at the actual user level, the distributor is not going to be happy, right? He's not a stockist in the sense that it's not an FMCG product that you do one ad in the TV for a toothpaste and then people come and ask for this product. No. Basically, you have to go assess, understand problems of the customer at the end user level, create indents, make sure that file moves from the end user to the purchase department. The purchase department floats inquiries. The process is totally different, right, in B2B as compared to B2C. So doing all that, we were able to increase our distribution network today to across India in most of the places where we wanted to do. One other key strategy, apart from these blue smileys you see of our own sales engineers, territory managers, one thing which we adopted was called as an MSR, Missionary Sales Representative. Missionary Sales Representative is basically a contract guy you keep for 6 months, 9 months, or 12 months in specific areas and whose only job is to do a particular thing day in and day out. So the focus remains with him. You give him 15 customers, tell him, take this product, go do a demo in 15 customers day in and day out, thereby creating interest in the company so that they pass on the inquiry to your distributor, who in turn buys it from you. So this is a method we did. Doing all this, we were able to come to this level of sales today, right? So when we started, we were at about 100 million, less than 100 million rupees. Today, we are at about 242 million till 2019. From 3 people, we are today 59 people. From 2 distributors, we are 69 distributors. And we have, if you see a comparison to our competitors, we hold the highest value share as far as all the competitors in India is concerned. And this is available in Government of India's Corporate Affairs website. So it's not something, so this is measurable. So when we are setting objectives for the team, the thing is you need to be having measurable objectives. I will come to that last in my slide on attributes, but you need to be able to have a vision, as I told you in the beginning. You need to have focused strategy for day to day, then you need to have a specific strategy for long term, and then you need to have measurable objectives, and then make sure you have a strong review mechanism to review that again and again. Someone had asked my friend some questions, so I thought I will address that. The difference between India exporting to other countries and a foreign company based in other countries trying to expand and grow, the challenge is totally different, right? So if you see in Southeast Asia, for example, we are talking about 13 countries with 600 million people with over 2 trillion in GDP growth. So this is basically Southeast Asia, starting from Japan, South Korea, Myanmar, Thailand, Cambodia, Laos, Singapore, Vietnam, Malaysia, Philippines, Taiwan. So this is also my territory, which we are considering. Again, if you see what is very similar to India, is you're seeing wide-ranging geography, totally different language and cultures. The only thing which is common is probably English, with maybe 5% of people speaking. Mandarin for Chinese oriented people, maybe around 8 to 10% in these countries. But other than that, everything else is different. And the other bigger thing you got to take care of is this. Currency fluctuation against US dollar can break or save you in many organizations and many countries. Let me give you an example. When we started this business, $1 was 50 rupees. Today it's 76. So you can calculate what's the difference in percentage. The same thing with Singapore dollar. Singapore dollar was close to 4.3 and today it's 3.5. Indonesia was 10,000 rupiah to $1. Today it's 14,500. So pricing, affordability, everything drastically changes when the currency fluctuates so much against the US dollar, especially in a stable business environment. When you have a B2B contract between a manufacturer and a distributor and end user, they're going to deal, as far as themselves are concerned, in their local currency. So if I have a distributor in Jakarta, for example, he's going to buy in rupiah from my office in Singapore. Now, if the rupiah to the dollar fluctuates from 10,000 to 14,000, you can imagine what it will do. It will wipe out all your margins, or you gain margins, and he becomes non-competitive. So both sides of the spectrum are very much possible. So your pricing strategy has to take this into account largely. So one of the things which we did was we did a SWOT analysis for Southeast Asia. SEA, by the way, is Southeast Asia. So before you make a strategy, you need to have a SWOT analysis done. I won't go into the strengths and weaknesses because that's specific to my company, but you need to understand all the threats which can come from different places. For example, this is a very major threat. You think that you have a fantastic product, you have an extremely reliable product, and you go and exhibit in Indonesia in a trade show or an exhibition. 2 years later, you go back to that same trade show. There are 17 people having stalls whose products are very similar to yours by looks. So what does it do? It does two things. One is it brings down your price level drastically. Number two is the value attributed to your product as perceived by your customer can change if the competitors counterfeit do not perform well. This a very major challenge is how to manage this. So you need to have a very strong trademark. You need certain countries have first to file option. So I can give you a small example. We had an issue with Indonesia that we came up with a new product, a new technology for IoT-based product, right? So we called it Flexco Elevate. So when we go in and file, and we found somebody has filed an opposition to that, saying that he has already filed that name under Flexco Elevate. So now we are fighting a legal case trying to make sure that we get it back. But the reason why I'm telling you this is there are many unknowns when you go into unspecified geography. So you need to take time to understand and assess these issues before you start your actual business operation. These cultural differences are very, very critical. Japan may have drone delivery on one side. On the other side, from a thinking perspective, they are still in 1920s. They do it for two angles. One is they do not want to allow outsiders to enter their country and give a product. Number two is they just don't like change. If you see, Mr. Abe was Prime Minister for 17 years because nobody else wanted to take up the job. They don't like change, period. Right? So it takes hell of a lot of patience and time if you want to change mindset in Japan. And you have to go along with them and slowly try to convince them. Elders have, from a hierarchy point of view, elders outrightly will kick out thought process of younger people if they feel it's not right. So why I'm explaining this is the cultural differences make a huge challenge. Even when you're sitting for a meeting, I'm sure some like Ramchandran he's working at the Korean company. So he knows that the guy who sits closest to the door is the lowest in the hierarchy. The guy who sits farthest from the door is the highest in the hierarchy. The so-called equals will face each other on the table. So all these things are very particular for them. Otherwise, they will talk to the wrong person and perceive wrong things. So just giving you an example of how culture matters, right? So opportunities are plenty. Everybody has opportunities for everything. If you see, if opportunities were not there, let's assume that India, everybody says there's no money, nothing. How come Kia set up a plant, coming up with full page ads for Sonnet, competing in the same space as Hyundai's SCV, right? So, but differentiation, they're trying to differentiate themselves. They're trying to say that we are offering a better value product. Opportunities are available. It's for us how we encash it and how we position our product and to whom. So I think that's very key to B2B strategy. How do you position the product to which audience you're looking at, right? So that's another very key differentiator for B2B. I guess it's true in B2C as well, but in B2B, it's even more important because let me give you an example. There are 4 or 5 established bearing brands, and there are 20 to 30 copies and Chinese brands. 20 to 30 copies are owning close to 50% of market share because customer doesn't know. And SKFs and Timkens are not propagating. They are trying their best. They're trying to put QR codes. They're trying to do stickers to show that they are genuine and all that. But it takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of thought process because you're not dealing with the end user. You have an in-between channel, and that channel can make or break you. So channel strategy is extremely important on how you select and choose the right partners going forward. Positioning the product to which audience, using which channel strategy, and the pricing strategy. All these 4 are very key. It may sound very cliched and simple to all the folks who have finished MBA in marketing, but it varies for each product. And I can tell you, But I worked in 8 different companies, 8 big companies, and the challenges have been totally different in all the places. So let me go back to the basic strategic actions which are needed when you're looking at growth. Right? The most important is right people on the bus. What does it mean? It means you need to have the people who are willing to work for you, who are aligned in thought process, who are willing to take logical risk, who are willing to get their hands dirty, and who are willing to execute to a plan. Very important for right people on the bus. If you don't have the right people on the bus, your growth strategy will flop. No two things about it. I already spoke about distribution, having the right set of channel. Selection, nurturing, growing are 3 different aspects of channel management, right? This is very key. Many companies neglect this. They think geographic expansion and wider expansion is more important. I believe that if you decide to go into a particular territory, you need to go deep into that territory and encash on all opportunities rather than spreading yourself thin. The problem with spreading yourself thin is you will create customer apathy. Customers will not like you if you're not able to satisfy them. And you will have a management bandwidth problem when you get back. You don't have enough people focusing on your strategy or on the execution plan. And of course, I already spoke about the right price products, right? So let me just give you a small example of how we, like, for example, forget about the numbers, right? It doesn't make any sense for you. But the thing was, we had a whole, sorry. Can you see? I hope you can see. Yeah. So we had the growth stagnating at this level, right? Fluctuating between $4 to $5.5 million. So when we sat down as a team, and then I was able to convince the board that these are the basic strategies we're looking at from 3 phases, right? This I already explained in the previous slide, that is expand and increase customer intimacy. It's not enough if you just know or take orders from your distributors. You need to understand who are the end users, why are they buying that product, or why are they not buying that product. So customer intimacy is extremely important. Move from order takers to order generators. We don't want merchandisers in B2B, right? We don't want people who would just go to a shop and say, give me 5 of this, 10 of this, 10 of this. No. We want you to go to the ground and the customer, what issue he is facing, why is he facing that issue, and then see if you have a solution which helps him. That's a longer term sustainable option than to just take an order. Of course, go deeper into territories I already covered, and then build specialist capabilities. Use low-cost resources. So if you're going into high-cost country and you already have a backup from a low-cost country, see how much to leverage those resources, provided they have the capabilities, right? This is a very broad strategy. And then, of course, this is very keen. Today, everything people expect, if you're a Prime member in Amazon, you're expecting your delivery in 2 days' time, right? Everybody expects it in 2 days' time. B2B, unfortunately, is not like that. You have certain manufacturing locations, you have a lot of places where people are buying. So you need to go closer to them. You can either have your own warehouses, you can have third-party 3PL warehousing, or you can have contract warehousing, but you need to make sure that at least fast-moving products you're able to deliver at the time frame or the lead times which customer wants. Very, very important. Customer will not wait. He has many options today, right? It's not that you're not the only guy who's supplying him the product. You have to constantly look at changing organizational structure to see if it is effective, right? If you find that the organization is becoming bureaucratic and it's lagging, then you need to remove those bottlenecks and make it more agile. Agility is the most key process for the whole organization to move forward. So, and then expand into Middle East. So this is just a basic strategy which I have put across. So when you come across with the hierarchy, one thing you need to remember very clearly is you will not be very effective if you have more than 6 to 8 direct reports. Right? Many of you have direct reports, many of you are reporting to others, but the key is that if you want to focus, and focus is the primary driver for keeping people aligned to a particular task. So having more than 6 to 8 people will dissociate or will distort they will get distracted and move in different places. So focus will be lost and you will not be able to convert whatever strategies you take into actions. Always remember what I was saying. If it is possible, try to split into short-term, medium-term, long-term actions. Forget what I've written here, but the basic process is you need to have something to sustain your existing business. You need to have that strategy. You need to have midterm strategy for a year or 2 years. And then you have to have a longer term strategy, which is more than 3 years. So the longer term strategy, the people who work on that should not be under pressure every quarter or every day or every month. What's your target? How much have you delivered? Then their focus will change. They will become more into troubleshooting than into looking at the bigger picture, the wider canvas, right? So this is very key to when you're delegating or when you're setting strategy, the right people on the bus is coming as part of the manpower. But I just go back to this slide. Please remember that this is key apart from the strategies which I've already explained earlier on. This is just to show how the distribution proposed. So today it was from Singapore to every other place. So we are trying to see if we can move one warehouse to either Japan or Korea, try to move one warehouse from Singapore to Jakarta in Indonesia to cater to the big 4 islands in Indonesia. By the way, Indonesia has 16,000 islands. 15,000 of them don't have anything, but 4 of them are the big ones which constitute 95% of the population. So we are trying to move one warehouse here. We are trying to see if we can move from this warehouse to this block of countries. So Cambodia, Vietnam, Laos, Thailand. 1, Singapore is far more expensive. 2, the lead time of getting product into Singapore and then reshipping it to these places takes 8 to 10 weeks. So customers are not willing to wait for so long, which means you need to go closer to the customer. And the best method is, if you're able to manage your cash flow, to split your inventory into different locations so that you're closer to the customer. So these are all basic to B2B kind of setup. You have the, what are those people called in B2C? You have these super distributors, super stockists who in turn distribute in each city. This is more akin to your own setup, either as a 3PL or as your own, because you need to have control over the product and how you manage the distribution in terms of pricing, because the price levels or the currency, I explained to you earlier about the currency and the fluctuation, right? So the price list or the pricing in Thailand would be in baht, in Vietnam would be in dong, and in Singapore it's in Singapore dollar. Here it's in maybe US dollar, or because Philippines is more akin to US or to US dollar. Taiwan has a lot of proliferation from China, so you're always competing with Chinese yuan. So which means you need to be taking care of how the US dollar will move against the RMB or the yuan, right? So this is okay. This is just an example of how we would grow in the Middle East, for example, right? So you're putting in a forecast of sales plan, and then you're forecasting what would be your margins, what would be your expenses, what's your income. All these are assumptions, but if you don't have assumptions to start with, you don't have anything based. And then you put down what are the major investments you're looking at, both from an OPEX or from a CAPEX level. And then you put on what kind of training you're going to ensure for both your people as well as your channel partners. Who is going to go and select those channel partners? Who is going to assess the opportunity? So you need to sit down and have a brainstorming and come up with a master plan, and then come up with a kind of a roadmap or a timeline to decide about how you want to move. The timelines are not written on stone, right? It is supposed to move based on how circumstances and scenarios change. But you need to evaluate and come up with these timelines, and you need to come up with the different options so that you are able to use agility when needed. That's very key. I don't know what this is, but so from my experience in somebody else is writing something. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We can hear you.
Yeah, okay. All right. So let me summarize what, in my experience in the last 30 years that we have been in corporate, what makes you successful and what will keep you as a passenger or mediocre are these things. Many of these things you have read in, you have heard it as different words, different jargon when you have studied or when you are working, but these are very key, right? Set a clear, simple vision for 3 years. Ensure that right, dependable people are managing those. If you are the leader, if you are the person who's doing it, ensure that you have understood exactly what is expected from you, from both from your management, from your boss, from your company, whoever it is. Building a very strong, clear expectation base is very important, right? People leave it ambiguous for people to have their own perceptions about what is expected of them. It is very, very important in industrial marketing or B2B to have a very clear expectation base. I am expected to go from 10 to 20 in 3 years' time with these milestones, with these checkoff points. If I don't do this, what's the backup for that? If I do this, what's the backup for this? If I can't do this, then what do I do? You need to have these clear expectations set to your subordinate or the company, basically. And then communication. 90% of failures happens because of miscommunication. People think they understood and then they do something else. And then it's back to square one. And then people have to again start off again to think, oh, no, I told you this. I think you have thought something else. So I follow a very simple philosophy. Whenever I talk to a guy, I think he has not understood. So it's my responsibility to make sure that he understands. If you follow this philosophy, I think you will be able to do. And this, you can't have team misalignment, team alignment. So the leader and his direct reportees or the people below him, everybody has to believe in that vision, in the process, in the strategy. If there are people who do not believe in it, each person starts thinking on his own, then everything will go in a tangent. If you want the whole organization to move in a particular manner, you need to have team alignment, very strong team alignment. All the leaders today, if you see successful leaders, they have very strong team alignment. I was speaking to Mr. Bal earlier on before this call, and I know that Anand Mahindra has a very strong team alignment with his core team. So if he thinks that this is what is the path for the Mahindra group to go from X to Y, everybody in that thinks in the same fashion. The actual working can differ, but the overall thought process has to be the same. Executing as per plan, course correcting, review mechanism, these are all standard procedural transactional stuff, but if it's not followed, it can create issues for a growth strategy. Rewarding performance, many of you are in IT, I guess you're getting rewarded in different fashions, but in B2B, you need to have rewards not only based on actual sales revenue, but on meeting certain milestones. Let's say, for example, you're going and setting up new distribution in the northeast of India. Let's say you have a milestone that you need to have 4 good distributors on the rolls by March of particular year. Even if the business has not come in, you need to reward that guy because he's taken the effort to find the right distribution partners for you for the future. So it's very important to have this. And I personally believe this is very, very important, right? Be fair and seen to be fair. It's not enough if you're fair. It's very important for other people to perceive that you're fair. If you can be tough, you can be easy, your style can be anything. You can be Hitler, you can be Trump, but you need to be seen to be fair. If I deal with you in a particular manner, I deal with that X, Y, Z in the same manner, then everybody believes this guy is damn tough, but he's fair. It's very key to make sure that people are always engaged and enthused for working for you or for mission. Some more attributes or behavioral patterns which I put specific to people for growing in corporate. This got nothing to do with B2B. It's a general thing. Passion for the job. If you don't have the passion for the job, you'll always be dissatisfied. You'll always try to find fault with what is being given to you. You're not driving a personal agenda. Your personal agenda for you may be growth, but if you try to drive your personal agenda in a company against corporate strategy and growth, you will fall on the wayside. I have seen so many people who have tried to follow this and have fallen on the wayside. You should be willing to take risk. You cannot be a passenger, and then if you're a passenger, you should be willing to take on Hindu rate of growth in your career. If you're willing to take some risk, it's like playing the stock market, right? If you buy Yes Bank at 12 bucks and sell it at 18, that's a logical risk. But then you have studied the market and you're taking a risk. So you should be willing to take some risk. And as I already mentioned about alignment, ability to work with different competencies, very key for leadership. Everybody is not going to have an IQ of 150. Everybody is not going to be thinking in the same manner. Everybody's DNA is different. Everybody's race is different. So the way they act, the way they are brought up, the way their competencies are, their capabilities are all different. But you have to get work from everybody. When I meant right people on the bus, I didn't mean the most brilliant people. What I meant was the right person for a particular job. If it is a repetitive kind of job, you need a person with that mindset. If it is a strategic thinking job, you need a person who will think big, who is willing to put various scenarios in place. You can't switch the positions. That's what is the meaning of working with different competencies. And the leader, or whoever it is, should be willing to get down, dirty his hands. Get down and dirty is a phrase in terms of saying, in our terminology, saying in a company, go under the conveyor, and actually even it doesn't matter whether you're a managing director or whether you're a sales engineer or whether you're a project manager. It doesn't matter whether you're wearing a tie or whether you're a jacket or an overall. If you want to understand the problem of the customer, you need to get down to that point where the customer has the problem. Only then you will be able to identify a solution for it. And of course, value system. Most Indians are brought up with this value system. Some of them have gone the Western way, but the value system will ensure that you stand up for whatever is right. Right? So in 50 minutes, this is a very short capsule of what I could take you through from basic strategies. If people have questions, if I've spoken too fast, please let me know and then I can go back to certain topics, but I'm willing to take any kind of questions anybody would have on B2B or strategy or anything. Open to all of you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. It's actually been very insightful in terms of, how the strategy has actually formulated for an organization that is of this scale and, the kind of reach that it has. And I'm pretty sure a lot of people have queries that they'd like answered. And I'd like to, start things off by asking a rather, important question, which I think is in the minds of many people who've joined the call. In terms of the scale at which a particular company operates in the B2B segment, does the way we actually formulate strategy change? And how important is strategy in those kinds of scenarios at different levels of growth? For example, when we start at zero, how do we actually go about, formulating a particular strategy or a charter, and how does it grow from there?
Can I stop the sharing so that I can see who I'm speaking to?
Yeah, it was Dinesh, sir.
Okay. All right. So I have done this in 3 companies, starting from zero and building up teams and building up strategies, right? So the first thing we need to understand is what's your mandate? What is expected of you as a company? Is your global company or Indian company ownership, stakeholders, what do they want to achieve? Do they want to achieve market share? Do they want to achieve market dominance? Do they want to expand their awareness of the product? They want to be like Reliance, or they want to be like somebody, right? Anybody who is in this space. Do they want to be a safe player? Do they want to be an aggressive player who's willing to put all stakes on the floor? So that's the basic you need to understand. Once you understand that, the people who are making strategy have to basically, it goes back to the same 4 Ps or 5 Ps what you guys have learned in marketing, right? So it's a combination of product, price, positioning, and all that. In my opinion, the scale really doesn't matter. The Indian scenario is the canvas is built in such a way that everybody starts small. Unless you are Reliance or Adani who is willing to invest or use Facebook and other people's money to invest into the growth strategy. Otherwise, everybody is looking, especially in the B2B segment, the users are finite. Unlike, it's not a population of 1.4 billion who is going to use your product, right? So you need to understand clearly who is your audience, who are the actual users, how are you going to ensure that the product reaches to them. If you have these two in mind, then the scale doesn't matter. If, for example, if you're going to go across to all the 30 states in India and you want to reach a population of, or you want to get into a user base of, say, let's say 3,000 companies, right? The strategy won't change that whether it's 3,000 or 300. The selection of people or the people who are going to reach it out to those 3,000 or 300 may change. But the basic strategy in terms of putting a vision, putting values, putting what is the positioning, you're fighting against who is your competition, how do you identify opportunity, how do you identify an issue, how do you solve the issue. The number of people in your organization may change based on scale, right? If, let's say, for example, if you have 10 customers, you can manage with one customer service person managing with both. If you have 3,000 people, maybe you need 20 people. Maybe if you have 30,000 people, the number of people you have, but the boss who's thinking about strategy is still one. By scale of, it doesn't matter, you can have 20 vice presidents under him, but at the end of the day, the guy who is setting the vision or the alignment, which other people follow, is only one, right? Whether it's a 5 crore company or 500 crore company, the basic strategy, whatever I explained, doesn't change. And I have seen this. I started another company called Gates before this. They were into power transmission. Many of you who have cars would know that Gates is the world leader in making belts for both timing belts and as well as for the fan belt and stuff like that. So that's a different segment, right? The distribution pattern is different. The user is a car owner, but he doesn't know what's inside his bonnet. Is he a user, or is he or is the mechanic, the guy who changes all your service stations, are they the influencers, users? So it depends on, that who are the influencers, who are the users, in my opinion, is more important than scale. Scale is more as a function of rapidly multiplying what you have, just course correcting for culture.
Got it, sir. Thank you. And we have a couple more questions coming in from a few of the participants. So we
should I go to the chat and see? Or?
Yeah, please. So we have one from Siddharth Kumar, Abhinav Kulhar, and one from Shankar Subramanian.
Yeah, so Siddharth Kumar, I will answer your specific question. Is we are not an Indian company exporting to Southeast Asia. We have our own setup as a Southeast Asian company registered in Singapore, dealing with the other companies. So we have to worry about diplomatic relationships between Singapore and other countries and not between India. India is a product which is offered to the warehouse, and once it goes into Singapore, it becomes a Flexco product. It becomes global. Doesn't matter whether it's coming from India, China, US, or any such thing. So that's very key to ensuring from day one that you do not go and publicize or sell based on a particular country. Rather, you sell based on requirement and competency. Does it answer your question, Siddharth?
So on that point, sir, I'll actually read out the questions as well, because we are actually streaming live, and it would help to record the question on the stream. So, Siddharth, does this answer your question?
Yeah, completely.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, so let me answer the second part of Siddharth's question. What strategies have you adopted to align your company to the current demand of Atmanirbhar Bharat? So we started Atmanirbhar Bharat in 2014. We didn't wait for Mr. Modi to tell us to do Atmanirbhar Bharat, simply because the high import duties would have killed my business if I hadn't done it myself. Right? So 60% of my product I make in India today, either through me or through my vendor. When we started in 2014, 100% was imported from the US. And by 2016, 60% is localized. There are only one or two products where the scale of operation or the capacity which we have in the US is far greater than what is needed for us to localize here. So most of the high cost products, so the strategy we adopted was, let's take a product, let's call it as a belt cleaner, right? The belt cleaner has, let's say, 20 different components. Out of 20 different components, 16 components are steel and heavy. It did not make sense for me to bring it from the US and sell in India steel, right? So obviously we made 16 of those parts here. There are certain things which creates the value of the product. Let's say 3 or 4 of them. So those 3 or 4 of them by value will constitute maybe 10 to 15% of the value of the cost of the product, but they are the heart and soul of the product. So those we import, and we do the local assembly here, so that it's a combination of Atmanirbhar Bharat meeting requirements of local sustainability, at the same time keeping our identity or our patent intact. So that, does it answer your second question?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And the second question we have is from Abhinav Khullar. He has asked, how did MIS metrics change from the growth phase to the settle phase?
Does it ever change? No, it doesn't change. The scale, I guess the scale would play here, right? When what is a typical MIS? How much sale has been done in a particular frequency, daily, monthly, quarterly, yearly? How do you compare it? Do you compare it to last year, same time? Do you compare it to a budget? Do you compare it to last 5 years? Do you compare the growth pattern? Do you compare? So those are basic MIS. The next MIS is from a production point of view, how much tonnage have I produced? What is the percentage of my rejection? What is the wastage I've created? I guess the review mechanism would change more than the MIS. The MIS would be the same. The review mechanism, or the way you ask questions to the people, will change from a growth phase to a settle phase. In a growth phase, you are more indulgent. You are willing to accept mistakes more, because mistakes drive innovation. And in a settle phase, obviously, you are not going to accept the same guy making the same mistake 2 or 3 times. Then he's not the right guy in that bus. Abhinav, does it answer you?
He says yes.
Okay. Yeah, okay. So can you please tell us 2 key challenges you have faced in your career and how you overcame it? Stay focused. I lost focus a couple of times. Stay focused. Initial first few years, you don't know what you want. You're always thinking that grass is greener, browner, bluer, blacker on the other side. And you go there, the other side, and then you find that you were in a false sense of security, thinking that I will gain something better. So obviously you're the best judge for that, but please remember that you have to build your brand from zero wherever you go. Whatever you did in the past in a particular company is specific to that company, that scenario, that situation. The moment you shift to another company, you may go on a higher level, but you are still starting from zero. If you believe that you're starting from zero, and if you're able to look at basics and grow from it, then you can face those challenges. Otherwise, you'll always be frustrated. And you need to have a combination of self-determination and initiative against patience. This is always a challenge. Yes, I expect to get 20% growth in salary. I expect to go to the next level every 2 years. My company is having it has a flat hierarchy, doesn't allow me to grow. So these things are, these are the challenges which you have to face on your own. In my view, I would say, do a job which you're passionate about, stay focused, have alignment, and use your capability to take logical risk. And end of the day, you have to be at the right place at the right time to overcome the challenge of your career. It doesn't mean shifting all the time. It means sometimes staying and assessing. So you need to be a very good assessee of yourself against the environment you're operating in. I think that's the two key challenges which I have faced. Is the timing of movement is very important. Sometimes I have taken those decisions very fast and fallen flat on my face. I was not a managing director all my life. I've come up the ranks from a sales engineer onwards. But the thing is, you need to have basic alignment to your thought process, your capability, and your passion. I think those three, if you're able to find in your job, you will grow. It's a matter of time, you will grow. India is a consumption market. I don't believe anything what McKinsey's and other people say that pandemic will make India go down. I don't think. Everybody has to live, everybody has to eat, everybody has to grow. And the segment which we are operating to is the 300 million middle class plus the upper middle class. And we are not talking about the 200 million people who are below the poverty line, which I feel sad about, but I can't control or do anything about. So I think stay in your zone, and if you're comfortable managing your aspiration, I think you'll be able to overcome it. Managing aspiration is very key.
Right.
You cannot become a managing director in 5 years' time. There has to be a certain level of maturity which has to come into your thought process. You need to look at the bigger picture. You should be able to put it on paper, and you should be able to demonstrate it. Only then people will believe. And as I mentioned, the next company you go to, you again start from zero. Please remember that.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Mukund.
Yeah. How do you place business in terms of ethical issues, specifically the business relationship with China? Do you feel it should be business as usual in view of Chinese aggression? Let me answer this in two ways. As a corporate soldier, I will follow the diktats of my company. As an Indian, I can have my thought process to myself. I believe we should not mix both, because there are certain business decisions you will have to take. Many people have to depend on China. Just because Mr. Zhao, Mr. Z or somebody else has a different opinion doesn't make the normal Chinese person any different from you. I have visited Pakistan, Karachi, and other places to build businesses in my previous organizations. I have gone to their houses, I have sat with them and eaten with them. There is no difference in their thought process to ours. So obviously, if you bring diplomacy or if you bring nationalism into this, then, but the good part of the story is I don't handle China. So at this point of time, this answer is theoretical. But if I have to, if I buy certain products from China and India doesn't have that product. So what do? I have to cater to my customers. Can I tell them, sorry, it's from China, so I will not meet that need? I can't, because it's needed as part of my overall package. So I can minimize the impact, but I don't think till we are 100% self-reliant, we can overcome this. And I don't think we should put ourselves in the mindset of a soldier when we're taking these decisions. Then the overall thinking will change. I'm giving you my honest feedback on this. It's not that I'm pro-Indian or anti-Indian or any such thing. It's purely a business decision. And my responsibility is to ensure that my customer is happy. So if my customer has to be happy, unless my customer tells me, no, I don't want anything Chinese, then it changes the equation. But if he says, I want a solution, and I don't have that solution at this point of time, I have to necessarily depend on somebody. Either I should create the capability of myself to do it, or or challenges, or the challenges across different states of India more or less same. If different, please highlight state-wise challenges and strategies adopted. Typically, the challenges are same as far as India is concerned, except for the language and the food. Obviously, the challenges are in terms of access, in terms of terrain. All the states and places which most of us know are so-called developed part of India. There are many parts of India where we have been, which are not as developed. So the challenges there are different. The expectation of the customer in those places is, if somebody comes to see me itself is a great thing. So I should honor him and I should give him what he's asking. There are some places where you're treated like shit and some places where you're treated as king. So those challenges are different. But largely, if you see, West India and South India are very much aligned as far as challenges is concerned. East India doesn't have that much business, but it's still challenges-wise the same. North India has definitely different set of attitude-related things, which is different to other parts of India. So the way a person will treat you or deal with you, you have to have cognizance that he's not meaning bad. He just treats you, he treats everybody like that. So I guess the challenges are more on people-to-people interaction rather than on companies. The companies per se are all becoming now mostly pan-India specific. So I don't see too much of difference. How do you plan capital needs? How much is in-house and loans? So
we're well over time already, just to chime in here. So we may have to wrap up with this as the last question or the last two sets of questions, if that's okay.
All right. So how do you plan capital needs? So we have to have a longer term view on capital needs. You need to plan next 3 years and come up with what is needed and work out your cash flow. And depending on your company policy, you decide whether you take ECB loan. In our case, we take ECB loan, which means we get the money from our corporate and we pay them at a specific interest of 2, 3, 4%, whatever is agreed between us, rather than depending on the Indian segment, Indian banking segment. But I guess we could take loans. Nobody's stopping us from doing it. What is the cost of money has to be understood and factored into your plans. If that is understood and factored, then I guess you can do in-house. In-house is possible if you're generating negative cash flow. In our case, we generate negative cash flow. We don't give credit to the market that much. So because we don't give credit to that market, we get cash upfront from 80% of our customers. And we are operating on 7-day, 15-day payment cycle to our vendors. So there is, if our gross margin is more than our expenses and we are able to build positive cash flow, then some portion of CapEx can be managed from that aspect. Yeah. But if you build enough capacities in the beginning, I guess you should have lesser capital needs every year. If you keep having capital needs every year, it means your overall planning cycle, something has gone wrong. That's my personal belief. Unless there is a total change of model and product cycle in between. Isn't de-risking a part of strategy since any political escalation may impact India or elsewhere? Yes, perfectly. Very good, valid point. At a corporate global strategy level, de-risking is very important. There used to be one product which was made 100% in the US in Michigan. And we all sat down, brainstormed that if there's a fire or if there is a political breakdown between US and other places, we can't supply the product. So we evaluated options and put up a plant or put up a cell in India to cater to Asia and Australia part of it. So that's the de-risking we did. Something we have plants in different parts of the world only for that de-risking aspect. It is not only for catering to faster lead times, but also to ensure that de-risking happens. Hope that answers your question. Military escalation, I'm not a military strategist. I hope it doesn't happen, but I also think it's very minimal that it will happen. If at all it happens, it'll probably be local. Stakes are too high for both people to actually have a bigger conflict.
Thank you, sir. So we've come to the end of the questions so far, and with it the session as well. And I'd like to thank you again for taking the time out to host the webinar with us. It was really an insight into how the B2B market actually works and how we actually do go about not just setting the strategy, but also in terms of the softer aspects in terms of how to actually get it in motion. And in terms of the importance it has in the overall grand scheme of things. So thank you so much. And I'd like to also thank Ramachandran sir for actually in a way informing you of our committee and also getting you to come on board with us. I think Ramachandran sir also wants to share a few words before the end of the session. Ramachandran sir, over to you.
Thank you, Dinesh, and thank you, Akshara, and all of you who have joined this program. And to thank Mukund specifically because, my relationship with Mukund, with his permission, I would like to share it with this group. We knew each other from the year 1983 when he came and joined 11th standard at DAV and I was at DAV. And from then, our journey has been together. So it's almost 37 years that we know each other. And we also went to college together. He talked about some risks. I think we were the first one of this. I think he started taking risks at that age. Then we went to an unknown place in Maharashtra to do our engineering, and then we passed out. Both of us did production engineering, and then after that he joined Sundaram Fasteners, I think as in some planning. Then he quit and went to DCM. From there, he went into DCM. Computers were selling computers, and that's it. I think from there he went on to various places. When I was looking into technical and this side of the thing, but I think I must thank him very specifically because Mukund, as you know from his profile and what he's dealing with, he's not there half the time in this country. And I think pandemic in a way had made him actually put a break on his travel all over this global travel. But that has been in a way, it's good for him. And also, I think we were lucky that he was able to give time to us. So I would like to thank Mukund for his valuable inputs. I think it's what he has spoken is spoken very practical. And I think it's just not something from the book. Because I know him and have seen him and have worked, we've lived together. So I know him very well. So very, very practical. I think all the youngsters should definitely take a cue from what he has told. Forget the MBA and things like that, but I think that's been a very good part. Thank you, Mukund. Thank you for being there to all of us and sharing your brilliant, a wonderful experience with us. Thanks. Thanks to Akshara, Dinesh, Rohin Bal, and also Professor Tailor for organizing this meeting at such a short notice. Thank you all.
Thank you,
Right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Mukund sir.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah. And thank you everyone for joining the call as well. Hope you all have a nice day.